You guys can hear me, right?
Welcome, everybody. Hi to all of our panelists who've joined us today. This is another Recruiter Table Talk. I'm your host, Georgia Musgrave, and we're just thrilled to have our audience here today to talk about some trending topics in 2024 when it comes to recruiting. Our focus today is addressing the issue of loneliness and the heightened levels of loneliness that our employees are experiencing, and some strategies to counter the negative impact of remote work. Clearly, it's one of the things we're hearing from a lot of HR professionals, and mental health has really become center stage for a number of human resource departments and leaders. And so this is our opportunity to tackle that subject here today. It kind of got me reflecting on a statistic I heard many years ago, maybe 4 or 5 years ago, pre-pandemic from Cigna Health, that had identified that 61% of employees feel lonely on the job. And I thought at the time that was an interesting statistic, and I didn't really put much concern into it at the time, but you can just imagine that post-pandemic, how that issue has exacerbated, given the remote work that many of us are doing. And loneliness is something that we all are dealing with. And having been one and part of an organization that's pioneered remote work since the 1990s, Duffy Group has dedicated 30 years to really developing an expertise in ensuring the best practices for all contributors to feel connected to the vision and to their work. We have employees that span the U.S., and we've invested and cultivated cohesive and high-performing teams despite all of that. So I think that we have a lot to say about this topic, and I hope that our suggestions and ideas provide insights that can help all of you. And this is to help those that are employees and also those who are managing the employees. Now, we suspect the audience has a lot to say as well. We've always wanted and encouraged a lot of communication on this platform. So please, if you've got ideas on the topic, questions, thoughts, please put them in the chat. We'd love to hear from you. We're just grateful to be a part of this community, and we want to build a broader community. So we learn just as much from you as you're learning from us. So without further ado, we are always on our table talks bringing in experts in the field of recruitment. And so today I'm being joined by Sharon Grace, Colleen Neese, and Kristen Posen. I really would love for all of you to check in on their bios. They come with a real depth in experience in the recruiting space, and all of them come from different backgrounds. So check them out. They're wonderful, and they've got a lot to say on the topic of loneliness. And as a matter of fact, they've collaborated on an article that we're going to be tackling today. So each has brought their perspective on the issue of loneliness. One in particular is an employee themselves that have selected remote work. And so I'm going to just really dive in and ask the question, how can an employee that is working remotely, who is experiencing loneliness, let's say, how can they change their mindset and make their remote space more productive? And I'm going to ask this of Sharon, because Sharon, you really put some emphasis on this in your particular article on what an employee can do. And so how would someone tackle that?
Yeah, great question. Thanks, Georgia. I'll start quickly with my story. I moved to remote work back in 2010. It was a long time ago. And I was in a very fast-paced environment, team camaraderie, collaboration. And at that time, when I would come home, there were blurred lines between personal and work anyway. But then when I transitioned to working from home, it was suddenly very quiet, and it was just me. My colleagues weren't there that I can hear them and learn from them and draw from their excitement and collaborate throughout the day. So it was me, myself, and I. And that was where I started to really dig deep and learn more about me and analyze what works best for me. while I'm missing my colleagues. So I say the most important relationship is the one that we have with ourselves. So that was a
Mhm.
good test for me. I'm a thinking person, and I realize that more and more. And I really like the quiet time because I can focus and think, but I not don't necessarily want it all day long. So I schedule calls with my colleagues, or I picked up the phone more. And in this case, called my clients, called candidates. And that's what gave me that momentum. I knew what I needed and what was missing in that almost overnight transition from working from home that a lot of people experienced back in 2020. So I had a decade to get used to that. So we didn't here at Duffy experience that, but I remember what I did go through.
Very interesting. So, what advice do you have for job seekers who are looking at remote? How can they, you said your best relationship is with yourself. How can one identify what it is about themselves that would make them effective in a remote environment and not get lonely?
Yeah, it's all individualized, but some tips would be what break your day down into meetings or phone calls or reporting, writing an article, something, your deadlines. What part of the day do you feel you are your best? And that may fluctuate from day to day. Is the morning your best time for this? Schedule this, but schedule in time to collaborate with your colleagues and build those relationships and learn. I call it learning.
Yeah, that's a great advice. As a matter of fact, you're actually giving advice on time management, just how to manage your day to be more effective. So I'm going to write all those tips down because I need them myself. But no, that's great. That's really great. Now, when it comes to Duffy Group, I opened up by talking about this is an area where we can offer a lot of insights because we've been doing this for over 30 years, and our employees span across the US and we're growing. How do we connect and keep them all connected? Now, this is an area that I know, Colleen, you and I have talked a lot about in terms of what companies can do and what Duffy Group in particular is doing to keep a positive experience for their employees that are working from home. And so tell me a little bit about your perspective on this matter.
Thank you, Georgia. Yes, and you and I have certainly worked together on a lot of these different initiatives that really just help us stay connected. And I think because Duffy Group's been doing this, we've been a remote organization for 32 years now. And so, we have really put in some practices that I think have helped our organization and helped our recruiters and employees really be productive and really stay connected with one another. And so some of the things that we are doing and that we recommend other organizations do as well if they're not already, of course, at the top of the list is going to be utilizing technology and in all sorts of different forms. So for example, Zoom, other types of video meetups, we utilize those regularly. For our leadership meetings, we utilize them with our clients, with candidates. And so that really does help. Having that face-to-face connection sometimes can be just more beneficial, I think, for all of the parties than just the phone connection. Now, again, we all know sometimes people are having Zoom fatigue. So, certainly makes sense of when you're utilizing the videos. But we also use technology on like the messenger apps, as you know, and we have different ones that, not always just work related. So we have certain conversations on those message apps. Some of them are just for fun. We are sharing personal information and really staying connected throughout the day. We have one that's just dedicated to our pets. We all love, sharing photos about our pets, or there's other ways that you can stay connected and really build those relationships. So we have certain groups that people can participate if they want to. It's a book club, or we certainly have a lot of health and fitness competitions that our employees can participate in. We have recruiter huddles. So those are more informal meetings that are always on the calendar so that employees can connect with one another on an ongoing basis. And that, I think, really has made a difference to combat that loneliness, but also to sort of make up from what you miss when you're not in the office in terms of being able to just share those takeaways as far as what you're learning, what you're working on. Celebrate often is something that we do, and we do virtually. We celebrate everything from personal celebrations, like we've had recruiters who have had wedding and baby showers, and we've all gotten on video together to celebrate and had a lot of fun. The one that stands out the most to me is when we had our 30th anniversary, and a nice touch was we all received a box of some food and some drinks at our home, and enjoyed that together while we celebrated virtually. Another thing I do want to mention, though, is strive to have some in-person connection as well.
Yeah.
One thing that Duffy Group does that Georgia, and we have so much fun together, is once a year, we fly in all of our recruiters and all of our team members get together for several days of not only are we doing training, but we are doing team building, and then we go out and do community volunteerism together too. So those are just some of the things that we do together.
Yeah, no, very, very cool. And I think the idea of celebrating is a really key point. And I'm glad you brought up the notion of the balance of remote and in person, because as you know, everyone has a role to play, and any organization will have different roles, right? And in our, it's no different. I have a completely different position than the others. And so I often don't engage very often with recruiters and what have you. So to see people in person and put a face with a name is really critical to those connections. And so that balance, I think you make a very good point. I don't know if other people have something to add around celebrations, but I'd love to hear it.
Well, one thing you left out, Colleen, is what we do every year at our retreat, which is the karaoke night, which is, and that's definitely memorable. Everyone has a little bit of liquid courage and gets up there behind the mic and dances. It's so much fun.
It is. It's a good time. And I think you just hit on it. Fun. Find the fun of every day. Find the fun. And so that's one thing. Fun is a key element to combating loneliness, I would say. Sharon, did you have something to say?
No, sometimes we meet with clients too. I left that part out as well. So we do have that ability to meet someone for coffee. Look for opportunities like that.
I agree.
Yeah.
I agree. That's great. Now, when it comes to, we've got some great examples in our company, very different company, been remote forever. But we know that a lot of organizations are just in the last 4 or 5 years embarking in this remote workforce. And knowing that, what more broadly can an employer do beyond the celebrations, beyond knowing that technology is a key component to keeping people connected, and these subgroups, these sub clubs you can kick off. Kristen, you talked about that perspective in your article when it came to an employer. And I think for the employees who are in our audience today, it'll be interesting to know what they should be thinking about and considering.
Right. Well, Colleen already gave a bunch of great examples, as well as Sharon. And one thing I wanted to say about Sharon's too is, breaking up your day. I think it's good to go outside, like actually leave the house and go and get some, vitamin D, some sunshine. Go outside for 10 minutes and have a cup of coffee and then go back to work. But as far as, some other ideas in terms of employers, I come from the HR world. So I always have like that HR perspective, how can we make this environment better for our employees? And something like co-working spaces. So being able to offer a space to actually leave your home office, come to, maybe it's just a small environment like what we have. We just redesigned our offices. They're gorgeous. And we have the ability to go there and work there. And there are a couple of folks that do do work from there during the week. And it gives you that face-to-face interaction, just, a change of environment, really. Another thing from an HR perspective too is looking at your employee mental health benefits. So, we really focus on, oh, let's get the best, PPO plan, let's get the best dental plan, but really, are you offering as an employer rich mental health benefits, and are they being utilized? Your broker can help you run reports to realize without, with confidentiality, are they being utilized? And if they're not, your employees probably don't know that they exist or that they can access them. So maybe getting the word out more about that. Um, and then another thing that's super important is making recharging a reality. Um, employees really need to, employee health really needs to be taken seriously from a mental health perspective as well, well as physical, and that human connection in friendships, that's what we need to thrive. So whether it's taking a look at your family employee leave policies, possibly offering some sort of child care stipends, elder care. I mean, I'm in this sandwich generation right now where I still have kids at home and I have a father who's dependent on my care, and it's a lot to struggle with that. And Sharon's in the same boat. And then making sure when your employees take vacation time that they really are recharging, that they're not answering emails, they're not answering phone calls, they truly can check out for like a full week, and the world will not explode with implode without them around. Like, it's their team's there to back them up, and they know that they're going to come back recharged and ready to accomplish more.
Great advice. Great advice. And, I talked early on about the notion of onboarding, setting the right tone, the expectations. You just said, knowing that when you take a week off, you're expected to take a week off. How do you advise an employer to provide that kind of onboarding and training early on? What advice do you have for onboarding, I guess, is the question.
Yeah, I mean, if there's any way to do some of that onboarding in person, I think it's really helpful because, a good example is during the pandemic, we hired a bunch of new college grads. So this is their very first job. And, I feel bad for them because it wasn't like my very first job, where I got to be in person, training on the job, meeting all these different people within the organization. So however you can make that truly experiential, I think we do a great job of it here in that we make sure that all new recruiters meet with everybody on the team. They have a one-on-one meeting with all of the practice leaders, get to know them better because they're going to end up working with them in the future. So really anything that you can possibly do in person, maybe even if it's like once a quarter, all the new hires from that quarter, they get together, or maybe you do a group Zoom so they feel like they're not alone, right, in this new journey. And another thing for that too is when you're hiring new folks, really setting those expectations on how to work successfully from home. Maybe this is their first job where they worked fully remote or hybrid. Give them tips and tricks on how to be successful, and then individualize it as well, because there's bosses that, like the owner of our company is amazing. Kathleen, she trusts us. She knows that we're going to get our work done, but there may be other ways that people look at remote work, and their expectations are, well, at the end of the day, I would like, to give me a report of kind of summarizing what was done in the day. And that's okay, right? That's just the way that they operate. Your company should have a company-wide expectation too, in terms of work schedules, how to accommodate time zones, whether you should be answering messages after hours, and nobody should be made to feel guilty that they're not doing something that's not fully explained and what the expectations are.
No, I think that's excellent. And I appreciate that advice. It's really great. And I said, so we've got some questions coming in. And the first question that I can see, I don't know if we can get it up on the screen, Oh, here we go. So if you have a coworker or boss that emails requests nonstop after hours and on the weekends, how can they be managed? Do they respond? And I think you just chatted about that, Kristen, about setting expectations around free time, weekends, balance, things of that nature. How would you tackle this question?
Yeah, I think, if that's not the expectation, then you need to have a, clear, transparent conversation with your boss, because you want that relationship to be successful, and you want to make sure you're providing what they need, right? So if there's a miscommunication somewhere, then you need to have that conversation. And if you feel like it's not going anywhere, then maybe HR needs to be involved, and maybe your boss's expectations are not realistic. Oh, Georgia, you're muted.
Sorry, but one of the things I wanted to say about what you were saying earlier about setting expectations and onboarding is that, it does take a different management style. And we have to consider that. Kathleen is one person, other managers have different styles. So when you're managing a workforce, really keying into the types of strategies that work makes sense, right? Being a micromanager isn't always the best style in a remote space. So keeping that in mind is good. Okay. So others, you want to chime in on the question about managing on the weekend, not responding? Do you agree with that, Colleen?
I'll chime in here and say that I think this is something that goes back to what Sharon had said, as far as, you got to really get to know yourself first. And I think I have really gotten to know myself through this journey, because prior to Duffy Group, I worked from an office for about 20 years and more than that. And I do remember when I joined Duffy Group, there were, I think there were some Duffy Group employees, including myself, that were concerned about whether or not I would be happy in a remote environment, because I am a people person. And so it's proven that I'm very happy. And I think it's by implementing some of the tips that we've talked about today. I mean, for example, later this afternoon, I'll be going to the office for a client meeting, and I'm very much looking forward to that. Tomorrow, late in the afternoon, I'll be meeting another client. And so I do try and sprinkle in-person meetings. I do a lot of videos, but I think you have to learn to put those restrictions on yourself. I think about the time when years ago, prior to Duffy Group, where I took a call from a client while I was sitting at the dinner table on Christmas. And so I've learned from then that I need to personally put in those boundaries. And so it's about knowing yourself and putting boundaries that make sense.
Excellent. Great advice. Great advice. So the second question that I would like to address, we'll see if it again gets up on the screen, is has to do with already working in a remote environment. But this person, so I work remotely and I want to learn and grow at my current company. I was reminded of the phrase, out of sight, out of mind. How do I shine in a remote environment? And I think that is such an interesting question. How do we present ourselves and show our interest in growing and be noticed? How do we want to tackle that question?
That's a great question. My initial reaction to that is, by doing high quality work. I know I've been speaking a lot, so I'll certainly ask Kristen and Sharon to chime in on how people can shine in a remote environment.
Well, the term that out of sight, out of mind, I think is coming back in. I'm starting to hear things about layoffs, and the chances that you are remote could be higher, that you would be laid off. So that can be something to really consider. I think there are opportunities every day all around us. And sometimes it's a matter of really looking and being open to that, raising your hand for something, whether that you want to participate in a group, or that you have an idea to bring to the organization that will create better efficiency, better communication, better work product, something. There's always those ideas. If you're entrepreneurial minded and you listen to stories and hear about other businesses, and you're creative, I think those are where opportunities come from.
I think
And
that's
executing from it. But you've
right.
got to speak up.
You
Yeah.
gotta speak up. You do. You've got to and raise your hand and volunteer and doing good work. I think your point, Colleen, is well taken. So hopefully that resonates with people in the audience.
And Georgia, sorry to interrupt, but I was just thinking, we are maximizing our time in many ways by being remote employees. We don't have long commutes. Think about those that are, doing very long commutes. And so, the time that you aren't spending on the road, that is time that can go towards helping you shine at your job.
Mm-hmm. And invest in connections that you guys have already painted that you can, really do. So, I mean, again, these are great questions. And I love the audience participation. And given the time frame, we only have so much time to cover these topics. I'm grateful for all the experts that have joined the table. Again, kudos to Colleen, Sharon, and Kristen. And please reach out to these individuals, look out their bios and reach out, because these are wonderful people to have in your corner for questions that may span after this, after this recruiter table talk. My takeaway is simply this. We've given a lot of, I think, great advice as it relates to employers' ability to leverage resources, technology, and identify creative ways to keep people connected. But as we started in the beginning, or I think, Colleen, you mentioned this, it's really up to the employee. It's really up to the employee to take advantage of these connections, learn who they are, take the time to evaluate what's working, where they shine, where they do best during the day. I think all of this is really, really great advice. And I think one thing from an employer point of view that wasn't touched on, that I would like to touch on, is the value of human resources in an organization or learning development teams. These are key people in an organization that hiring managers, leaders should be looking to develop even more creative ideas to keep those connections alive, because it's evolving. And you want your human resource team and your learning and development team to stay ahead of those trends and integrate all the plans that might make sense for your particular organization. So I don't want to lose sight of human resources and the value that they add in every organization. I hope that you've enjoyed this table talk. I always enjoy getting together with these experts. I learn a lot. I learn a great deal from all of you in this audience. We want to continue to see this audience grow. So the more you engage, the better off we are. Feel free to add some commentary, some other topics you'd like to see. But join us again if you can in March 7th. We've got a great topic on how recruiters are pivotal in giving feedback and to their hiring managers about candidates in the process. How do you give feedback to people that are in charge of their departments? And how can we empower our recruiters to do better in that regard? So that'll be the topic. We'd love for you to join us. And until then, please check us out on our social media pages. Duffy Group is everywhere, and we want you to be a part of our journey. So thank you so much, and we'll see you in March.